Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you if you're watching this later. We are here at our latest in our series of webinars for Friendship Place, where we talk about programs that serve the folks that we serve, talk about issues relevant to the people that we serve. And this topic is our program, Neighbors First Families, and we'll talk about how we serve children and parents and families through this program and have other ideas. Jean-Michel will jump in at some point and talk a little bit about the history of how we came to operate this program in the background here. But let me start by turning this over to Jean-Michel to offer a more broad welcome. And then Shanae, you and I talked offline about some of the questions that people generally have. But I do encourage everyone else to join in with questions as we go. We're going to make this very natural flow, an organic sort of flow, so that people can get a sense, have their questions answered. Jean-Michel, why don't you talk a little bit about what we're doing these days?
Yes, well, thank you, Chris, and thank you everybody for being online with us this afternoon. I'm looking forward to this conversation about Neighbors First Families, and our speaker is Shanae Turner, our division director at Neighbors First Families. Just so you know, Neighbors First Families is part of the Housing Services Cluster, which also includes Neighbors First Individuals, the Brooks at Valley Place, this location that we've just reopened a couple of months ago, and La Casa. And our Vice President of Housing Services is, um, uh, I'm sorry.
Something popped up. Oh, oh, your computer, you're muted, Jean-Michel. You got muted there. We may be having a technical difference. Oh, well, I'll finish that sentence for him. Shauna Figueroa is our vice president in charge of that cluster. And so part of her portfolio includes Neighbors First Families as well as the Brooks here. Jean-Michel, did you want to wrap up? And then it looks like you're free
Yes, sorry,
again.
I had a technical difficulty and I'm back. I apologize.
Welcome
All right.
back.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be back. So we're looking forward to this conversation. And yes, I will give a little bit of history. We have some questions for Shanae. And here we are. I'm going to turn this over to Shanae.
Oh, well, yes, my name is Shanae Turner. I'm the division director for families, like they said before. I am happy and honored to brag about families and all of the good work that we're doing. Kind of talk about some challenges that we're going to be facing soon. But I'm open to questions and answers to answer them all.
So, no, thank you. So, Shanae, I shared some questions with you. Maybe we'll do this as sort of an interview format. I think one of the first things is the best way to do this is let's talk about it at the beginning. So, how does someone come to find themselves in being served by Neighbors First Family? How do people get to you?
So families come to us through what they call CAP, which is a coordinated um, entry housing program through DHS. So a family will go to like Virginia Williams or a shelter and say, hey, I would like to be a part of a provider. And then through there, they'll do what they call a SPDAT assessment. So they will kind of assess the needs of the family and based on the severity of the family, what wraparound services they need, they will decide which provider can best meet those needs. And so, depending on friendship place availability, we are then assigned to a participant. So, right now, we have 178 families, and we have about 26 slots open for more families to come in. And so that's a good problem to have. That means we have the availability to receive more participants. Same with, we just started expanding families to now we are taking a mixture of site-based families and site-based individuals. So in November, we just partnered with villages up East River. right now, that's a site-based building. And so we just received 16 participants from there. And that's a mixture of families and individuals. With that, we have 25 slots still open for villages. So that means more families and individuals will be coming in for that building. And then coming up in April, hopefully, we are going to expand to assisting seniors 55 and up through a building called Carl F. West. And that's going to house roughly 18 participants that were going to be able to be served. So good things happening. We're expanding. That means more case managers coming, staffing wise, to help serve these participants as they're coming in. So we're excited about that.
Wonderful. So, thank you for sharing. So, a couple of what you just said stirred a couple of questions in my mind here. You had mentioned that there are that after people fill out the VI SPDAT, they're assigned to one of the other service providers. How many other groups are there like us that serve families through our Neighbors through our Neighbors First program, families program? How many other programs are there like this across the city?
So I believe it's over 12 providers that serve the same thing. John Michelle may have a better number
I
of
would think
those.
so, yes, just about 12 providers in Housing
Yeah.
First with the city. And yes. Okay.
Right. So another question then I have that kind of stirred from our conversation is, you mentioned that, we in a change from how we've done things traditionally, just to give a background for those who are watching, our Neighbors First programs really was scattered site is the phrase we've used, and that people really have their own landlords, their own relationships with landlords, and we help facilitate that. But in general, people are spread throughout the city. We had this opportunity present itself last year where a building where people were being served through permanent supportive housing needed a service provider, and we were brought in to do that here. And John Michelle, feel free to correct me if I've gotten any facts wrong in what I just said, or Sinead, jump in and correct me here.
Right.
But here's my question on that. Sinead, do you find it easier? Do you find it easier to serve folks who are in that one location because they're all in one place, or do you find it easier to work with folks who are put throughout the city? I mean, what do you find simpler?
Um, so sometimes, although it's called site-based, they're still kind of in different locations. So like villages, they have locations in Southeast, but they're still in different parts of Southeast. So as far as case managers go, they like to be in one spot to help serve them versus scattered sites, which, they're in Northeast, Southeast, all in one day. And so I think coming from a case manager standpoint, they probably would prefer site-based versus scattered site. Uh, but the services are still the same. They still have the same requirements. So I guess it just depends on preference.
Understood. So, you've mentioned we start off where someone is assigned to us, and then we take it from there. What are some of the first things you and the case managers will do when someone is assigned to us? How does that journey start for a family?
So yes, once they get assigned to us from another provider, we have 5 days to reach out to the participant as well as the previous provider, because a lot of them are coming through rapid rehousing. So we call that FRSP. And so that just means they're with another provider. We talk to them within 5 days to do the warm handoff. And that's just us talking to them about where they are, what they're looking for as far as relocation, what are their current challenges, whether with their children, if they have any truancy issues, any CFSA cases that we need to know about, any utility arrears we need to know about, because sometimes participants do come to us with balances from their Pepco bill or gas, and sometimes even rental, because sometimes they didn't know they were supposed to pay a portion of that, or their rental portion got sent to another old unit. And so we help kind of navigate all the challenges first, see if they need mental health support, employment support, and based off that warm handoff, now we know how to disseminate what resources we should be working on, how to get them housed. Sometimes people come to us without a voucher. So then that means for the next 14 days, we will be completing their housing application to obtain a voucher. And then some come to us with a voucher who are seeking to transfer to another unit. And that could just be off of preference, where they don't like the landlord, or pest issues and things like that. They have been wanting to move forward. And so we kind of start that process there. So the warm handoff is essentially the heartbeat of how we can start to help the clients. And then from there, for the next however long they decide to stay with us, or permanently or whatever, we will continue to help them um, throughout the duration they're with us.
Thank you. Well, you mentioned this, sometimes we need to help people who have a voucher who may not actually have an apartment now. We all hear about how difficult the housing market is in DC and in the area, and how expensive it is, and how hard it is to find places where people can afford. How do you all go? How do you go about that? How do you find safe, reasonably priced units for families that you're serving?
So as soon as they get a voucher, they have 180 days to find a unit. Now with recent changes, um, now they're saying that although their voucher is for 180 days, the current provider who is helping them, so let me kind of back up. So when a participant comes to us, they're considered FRSP. So their subsidy is getting paid by their previous provider. As soon as they get a voucher, they now have 90 days until that subsidy gets discontinued. Whereas before, they had the full 180 days. So now, although their voucher says 180 days, now we're under a time clock to find them a unit within 90 days. That can be through affordablehousing.com, that can be through Zillow, that can be from referrals we get from previous participants we've been working with those landlords and having those relationships. Sometimes they'll tell us, hey, we have a 3-bedroom available. So having good rapport with landlords is very important to us, because that's how we quickly get somebody housed, because of references, right? And then sometimes participants know better than we do, right? They know DC, they heard from friends and family who have availability. So depending on how much or how their voucher size is, then that kind of determines where they can go as well. So yeah, so a lot of challenges coming up when it comes to funding now in DC. And so we're trying to navigate that the best we can. But for now, our families have been leasing up very rapidly, as they're starting to get letters from DHS stating that their funding is being cut within 90 days.
Mm-hmm. No, and I
So
think
that
that's
kind of, yeah, so that kind of started um, effective February 1st. So anybody who received their voucher after February 1st is now on that 90-day time crunch.
no. And I think that's such an important point that, we're facing the same housing issues for serving the people that we're serving that really the community at large is facing in terms of lack of reasonable priced homes, lack of, places where people can afford. So it's a real credit and testament to the work of your team and what you're doing that you are able to find places that people can afford and can stay. And I really, that's an important point too, that oftentimes it's that word of mouth, right, with between participants who might have an awareness of where things are available and thus share it with other participants, but also, excuse me, that the landlords know that the people we're serving are people they really, really do want to have in their units and are open to that idea. Before I ask my next question, Gene Johnson, you had your hand up, so I do want to. And please, everyone, raise your hand or put questions in the chat. This needn't be only me. So thank you, Gene. What was your question, Gene? And you're muted if you. Sorry.
Okay. Thanks very much, Shanae. I volunteer at the Brooks, so I'm curious about whether the Brooks is something completely different than permanent supportive housing or families first. In other words, if there are 50 families there, they're not in the queue for going into families first. Is that correct?
Maybe I can take that. Uh,
Yeah.
yes, it's not such a straightforward process, right? There are options for the families. We help the families find affordable housing, obviously. Some, but fewer than before, go toward rapid rehousing, but there's a special process now to access that. So some families do come to us, but as we mentioned earlier, there are about 12 providers in the city. And so some families go to other providers. Some families even self-resolve, as we say, in the field, so they find another solution for themselves. Um, and so and the Brooks, as you know, because you serve there as a volunteer, is a short-term housing facility for families, for people who may not know. And exits are in about 120 days these days, up from 90 days because of the issues with the system, the fact that the system is not able to provide as much support on the rapid rehousing side. And so that has slowed down the progress of the families at the Brooks. But also at the Brooks, we're able to help with private funds from the Bezos One Day Fund. And that helps a lot because we're able to provide the extras and go beyond that, even support
Mhm.
families with job placement at aim higher, thanks to the private
Yeah.
funds.
Yeah, the reason I ask is that one family moved out and they went to Southeast, but the rent was so high that after a year they couldn't afford it, so they're back at the Brooks. And this is a person who has her own business and but the rent was extremely high,
It's a
over
tough
three
market.
thousand dollars a month.
Yes.
So I was wondering what was anticipated that after a year she'd be able to pay $3,000 a month?
Well, I'm familiar with this person, and she has her own business, so there might have been some assumption that at the end of the year she would be, in a financial situation where she might be able to afford the rent.
Mm,
Things get pretty complicated for the staff at the Brooks in terms of, housing affordability.
Hmm.
And sometimes the team there does the best
Yeah.
it can with what it has to deal with. And
Yeah.
so, that's what we're looking at. Um, but the families in Shanae's division have vouchers. Uh, and so the rent is covered, a big portion of the rent is covered that
Hmm.
way. And as some of you may know already, people pay 30% of their income toward the rent, no matter what the income is. And of course, there's an income cap. There's also a cap on the rents that we're able to subsidize as a system. Uh, so in terms of the way it works at Neighbors First Families, we are seeing fewer people exit because of affordability. The exits we've seen through the years are mostly sometimes because the landlord is not keeping up things in the unit in a way that's acceptable, and there's an inspection and the family moves out. We see moves more in that direction than because of lack of affordability at Neighbors First Families.
Thank you. No, and I think that's again worth reiterating is that, we're facing the same stressors that the community at large is facing, that it's a very expensive rental market. And so it's a real testament to Sinead, to your team and your work that you're able to find places for folks. So I see Debbie Greaser and Shelley have, rather than me go on with my questions, I see Debbie and Shelley have your hands up. So Debbie, I'll let you go first, and then Shelley, I think you were second.
Yeah, you may have touched on mine, but I'm not sure I completely understood. So what is the source of funding for this program for Neighbors First is one. And then is there like a typical duration of time of support?
So this is permanent supportive housing. So it's for the long term.
Okay.
But of course, we try to see if a family is able to give up the subsidy but in the system at large in DC, that does not happen a lot. The funding is from Medicaid at 70% on average between the two divisions, Neighbors First Families, Neighbors First Individuals, 30% from the city. And city funding activates when the person is not eligible for Medicaid.
So
Thank you.
it's a layering and a flow. But
Exactly.
Thank
and
you.
Debbie, it's funny, one of my questions later on, and we'll get to that, Shanae, I promise, is talking about people graduating, as it were, from the
Okay.
program. How often does that happen? Because I do want to ask that question. That's an important one. But I also want to hear Shelley's question. And then yeah, Shelley, your question.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Shanae, and thank you so much for sharing this valuable information with us. I'm on the speaker side, so there's so much I don't know about housing and all. My question for you is, so are you basically saying that, and I love the fact that you're establishing good rapport with landlords and housing officials to navigate, to help families to, to get help with housing. Are you saying that there's not a lack of housing in DC, just a lack of affordable housing that speaks to those vouchers that the families have? Is that basically what the key problem is? We're just, I guess, at their mercy of trying to find good prices for the families?
Correct. Pricing is the one, and then family size is second, right? We have some families who have 10 children. So that means 7 or 8 bedrooms.
Right.
Now, as you know, in DC, there's not a lot out there. So then we have to turn to Zillow or
Mm-hmm.
other referrals for housing because
Mm-hmm.
apartments just don't fit that.
Sure.
The problem, though, is we don't want to set families up for failure when we
Mm-hmm.
know their current unit is not being taken care of well.
Yeah.
They're not paying utilities on time. So then to give them a house with
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
lawn and to pay gas,
I get it.
it can be a lot, right? And so that's where the landlord report kind of comes in because they know, okay, this person's a voucher holder. They're back with Friendship Place, who's going to be that backup support
Mm-hmm.
if need be.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes landlords will just say, oh, yeah, I love Friendship Place. I love the participants. I know the risk.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it just depends. And that's why we make sure when we're talking to landlords, even if we know sometimes there could be wrong in some places, we
Mm-hmm.
still try to have case conferences and
Mm-hmm.
talk to them to make sure, the communication and the lines are flowing So just in case something ever comes up again, we can use them for future references.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Good answer. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. No, that's very interesting. I want to loop back around. We mentioned all the different service providers, and one thing that is always, at least to me, impressive is how much everyone works well together in the city here, whether it be with the government agencies, whether it be with the other service providers. Do you find that you interact a lot with other service providers in this realm, or is everyone pretty much just doing their own thing?
Um, Interesting question. So we don't work with like other providers unless we're getting transferred a participant from another provider. We tend to work more with CFSA cases, or we tend to work more with, trying to think, probably DBH, Department of Behavioral Health, for mental health services for families. Sometimes DC Safe when it comes to like domestic violence situations. So it really is a case by case situation depending on what needs arise, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. No, I mean, and it's I can see why you wouldn't on a daily basis necessarily work with other service providers, but it's nice to know that folks are out there to offer ideas, offer advice, to really work together. I mean, we all have, whether it be the city or whether it be, the folks on this call, whether it be you or other service providers, we all want what's best for the families. And the fact that we can all come together and work together is quite a powerful message. So, Catherine Lumen, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much for this. Great information. My question is, what's the ideal ratio of case managers to participants? And how, to what extent are you able to meet that ideal ratio?
So our contract is pretty interesting when it comes to families. So the contract says that they can serve up to 25 participants, but for families, we try to stay around 17 because, as I said before, one client could have 10 children. So giving them that many participants would be way too much. So we tend to stay around 16 or 17. And we have been doing a tremendous job since I've started. That was almost 2 years ago, to stay around that. Sometimes if it gets close to 17, supervisors and myself will take on some participants to make sure, one, we're keeping the case managers happy, whole, and can have some self-care. But I love seeing clients. It's good to see them face to face anyway. So sometimes you'll see me out in the field as well. And they enjoy it. Sometimes they're like, wow, a director is here in my house. Yes, I am. Hi. And so we try to stay around the 16 or 17. Right now, we have 12 case managers. 2 are starting on Monday to help the new contracts we have with villages and Carl F. West, so we can kind of prepare for those participants to come in. And then we have 2 more starting late March to also kind of make sure everyone's fully staffed and make sure everyone kind of stays below 17.
No, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, we were talking about connections with other service providers, but obviously there are other folks in the city who work with families as well. And so one that comes to mind is DC Public Schools. I mean, how much do you interact with them, and what does that look like? How do you connect with them?
So when a family comes to us during the warm handoff, we have them sign a release of information for the schools.
Mhm.
And so quarterly case managers do school uh, verification forms they have to fill out to make sure they're going to school, no truancy, um, and just to make sure they feel supported. Sometimes case managers will have to talk to principals or school social workers when it comes to like grades, or if sometimes we have uh, a child a child who is not going to school, but the parent is saying, "Hey, I've tried everything I can." We kind of help support to let them know, like, "Hey, these are the resources we gave the parent. She's trying her very best." So we talk to them, try to collaborate with how can we maintain children staying in the school despite behavioral challenges, mental health challenges. Sometimes we have kids who run away when they're about to turn 18. And so helping parents kind of navigate that, having to do missing persons, child missing persons reports sometimes, and working with the school and saying, "Hey, have you seen the child?" And sometimes the child is staying with a family member or a friend or a boyfriend and refuse to come home. But the school can verify, hey, they're still coming to school. So it's really just kind of navigating how we can best support them, give them resources like um, pens. Those are, I forgot the acronym, it's PINS, but it's to help um, to work with, what is it, a truancy officer plus the school and the family to make sure that they're going to um, school. And sometimes things are court mandated. And so it just depends on the child and that actual case.
Very good.
I hope I answered that. I feel
Yeah,
like I
no,
was all
no.
over.
No, it really does. It does take a village, as it were, to bring, to help, people to thrive. And so it's great that everyone, a person in need of supervision, PINS is the acronym.
There we
Thank
go.
you. Thank you, Amatilla, for adding that. I guess one question, a really basic question I should have asked at the beginning, what is the age range of the children who are part of the families? Is there a particular age that you see more of, or, what's it look like?
Um, well, we serve 0 to 18. Sometimes if a child has disabilities, it could be up to 22, 23,
Hmm.
because they still consider them children, especially if they're still getting Social Security for them. Um, yeah, we kind of see influx. Sometimes we'll get a lot of participants who are seemingly pregnant around the same time when they come in, or we tend to have school age, so like K through 6, we see more. We see a sprinkle of high schoolers. Um, we just had a wave of children just go to college, and so it just kind of comes in waves. Um, but even that, helping families navigate being, the oldest child just leaving. We had a mom just had one of her child go to military, and so right now we're trying to do like a little gift basket for her, just so she can feel, still close to him and things like that. But yeah, it comes in waves.
That has to be very rewarding when one of the children goes off to college. I mean, it's got to feel like a uh, real profoundly moving thing. So,
Yeah, and to see how proud we had one who just went to George Mason University. Uh, we helped her mom get him a $10,000 scholarship.
Wow.
And and it just so happened that on one of the days I'm out in the field, I meet with her, and the deadline to apply for that scholarship was the next day. So we were able to hurry up and get that
Oh,
in so she can get that. So, that's why I love going out and seeing them, because case managers may not know a lot of the resources. And so it's good to have that one-on-one with them.
yeah, no, that's a very specialized skill set to find scholarships and like that. That's wonderful. What a great story. Thank you. Um, what, talking a little bit about case managers. I mean, yeah, what are, what, where do our case managers primarily come from? I mean, what is someone doing before they come to us if they're a case manager? And what are some of the traits and the skills? What makes a great case manager? Let me ask it that way.
Um, well, what makes a great case manager, they have to care, right? They
Hmm.
have to love what they do because it's a lot of different personalities,
Right.
a lot of different um, comorbid diagnoses clients may have. And so help sometimes, since they're not clinical, they may not understand, okay, this person's yelling at me because they are depressed or
Hmm.
bipolar or schizophrenia. Like, so it's a lot of education that has to kind of go along, but they have to be willing to accept that education and then apply what they learn, right?
Hmm.
So being open to that kind of feedback, being open to being flexible. I know a lot of the frustration is they want to see the clients on the time frame that they want to see them. Having children, sometimes that's not a reality, right? Someone has to run up to the school and see them so that they miss going to see the client that day. And so having to be flexible with their schedule is key. And then ensuring whatever communication you have with a client is being documented properly, right? Making sure when I read a note, if Chris, you read a note, you should be able to feel like you're there as you're reading the note. And so, um, empathy, flexibility, um, open to feedback and critiques, and then also putting aside personal things going on with you, right? Because we have clients who have been chronically homeless for years, just getting into a new space. They're not going to know how to budget, right? And so having time to kind of meet them where they are, understanding trauma, because that's what homelessness is.
Hmm.
And so um, just being open, and then friendly, right? We can't say friendship place without being friendly, right? And so,
Aw.
and so we want to make sure that we are there with a smile. They know me. I'm always trying to make clients smile or crack a joke or something because who knows what they had going on for that week. So the goal is to be a light every time you try to see a client.
Right. You talk about some of the skills that need to come in. DHS, provides various trainings. In fact, requires, as I understand, certain trainings. What are some of the trainings that DHS offers that helps to make the job easier for a case manager?
Sure. So they have TCP trainings. That's our contractual obligation. They're supposed to be doing those annually. It's a pretty extensive list, but it ranges from talking about motivational change, stages of change, motivational interviewing skills, uh, mental health first aid, HIPAA compliance and policies that they have to know, um, renting 101, learning clients' rights as well through Office of Tenants Advocacy. So we can help better advocate for sometimes these slum landlords that we get. And then we have internal trainings when it comes as far as documentation trainings, service plans. Right now, I have given the challenge to some of the supervisors to start preparing to do Narcan training, see if as they come to us to kind of talk about their expectations on how they screen calls. Hopefully that'll kind of come up soon. And then we have had CHAMPS come, that's Child Adolescent Mobile Psychiatric Service. They can come in and talk to us. They come in and bring goodie bags for us to give to the families, just so that families can know if a crisis occurs with one of their children, who they can call. So just anything that can kind of benefit participants or better equip the case managers, we try to do.
Very good. Well, thank you. I guess a side question to that. You mentioned that this can be a very stressful job, one that will lead to some vicarious trauma. What sort of self-care tools do we recommend for case managers? And how do we help them or help them to help themselves?
Sometimes, so just recently, I did a one-on-one check-in just with me and the case managers, just to kind of see where they are, right? Personally, work life, and through that check-in, it was able to help me know more about them, but also just some of the pressures that they're going through personally as they're still trying to show up for these participants. And through there, we talk about getting them their own personal therapist sometimes, going through EAP to get referrals that's needed. Or, self-care for them was even, I talked to other case managers, they kind of felt isolated from everyone because of where they were sitting. So just moving them closer to everybody else, they were so excited. So just really hearing them so they could feel more a part of the team. For them was self-care. It was like, yes, I feel better. I can bounce things off other case managers. And then also, I'm very a stickler for, as soon as your shift is over, turn it off, transfer it to the person on call, and have your time. So they know, like, I'm all about self-care. I'm like, oh, it's 5:01. Like, let's wrap this up. Like, I know, because our case managers really care. But if you don't watch them, it can lead to burnout, right? And so I want to make sure they feel supported, they feel like someone cares, because sometimes when you're trying to escape personal life, you kind of deep dive into your work. And sometimes that works for people, and then sometimes it doesn't. So I think just kind of having a pulse on them where they are uh, can be helpful.
No, that's very, very true. I mean, and you have to put your own mask on first, as they say on the airplanes, right? You've got, if you don't take care of
For
yourself,
sure.
you
Mhm.
can't take care of other people. It's so true. Um, you mentioned where people sit, and that's, an interesting, how how much of a case manager's day is spent in the field versus how much is spent back in the office documenting what you did in the field? How does that divide up?
So they have 3 field days and then 2 office days. For families, office days is Mondays, Wednesdays.
So during those 2 days, they're documenting what they've done on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And that's
Yep, documenting, calling clients to schedule for the field
right,
days,
right.
doing filing, whatever the case may be.
In fact, you mentioned something we were talking, separately. Some of us offline have been talking about additional volunteer opportunities across our different programs. And one of them, when we spoke to Neighbors First, and we got to work on that job description, is someone who two different job descriptions. One for volunteer who might be willing to come and serve as a reception. Not quite a receptionist, but sort of a front office person, the first person you see when you come in, and we're working on that job description. You haven't seen it yet because it's not done, but also one to help with filing because that is such a time-consuming task that if we could find volunteer and friendly support to help to manage that. So keep an eye out for that. We're not quite there yet, but we are indeed working on it. Um, you know, one of the questions that, Debbie, you had raised earlier, I mean, do we see people, I'll use the word graduate from our program, sort of leave our PSH program because they don't need us anymore? Is that something you see a lot, or what sort of turnover do you see in terms of uh, our participants?
I don't see it a lot, probably once every 4 to 5 months when it comes to that. But so there's 2 different ways, right? Sometimes clients are ready to graduate, but because they love the program so much, they love the support, and they don't want to leave, or they feel like it's going to impact their voucher. And so having that conversation about, hey, it's okay to graduate, right? I think when we say discharge or no, or what friendship place, it feels very abrupt for them. And so telling them, hey, you've been paying your bills, you haven't had any hospitalizations, you have a job, like this means, you work in the steps. And sometimes we may get those people who are like, yeah, you're right, or others who still insist on the fear that, well, I'm good for now, but what if something happens in 2 months?
Hmm.
The good thing about that is once they are exited, if something does come back, DHS does quarterly check-ins. So if something happens or crisis occurs, they can't ask to come back. It just depends on availability, right?
Mhm.
So um, the last participant who graduated, she felt like she no longer wanted us to see her children or do the school verification process, which is a contractual thing. And so since we can't see the children, we had to kind of talk to her about, well, if you feel like they're okay, they're going to school, it's okay to waive case management services. So it's really depending on what graduation looks like for them. But as long as they meet the criteria to be discharged or graduated, then it's perfectly okay with us. I do see someone's hand up.
Yeah, I say, Shelley, you have your hand up, but you're on mute if
Michelle.
you're.
I'm trying. There we go. Shanae, I really didn't. It's not a question. It's more a comment. Briefly, I just applaud you wholeheartedly. I feel your heart. You're in your right position. You're an excellent representation of Friendship Place, and I feel your heart. Just want to thank you for doing what you're doing, because I definitely, I mean, it just speaks volumes. My first time meeting you and seeing you, and you're definitely working in your purpose. And just thank you for what you're doing for Friendship Place. You're a wonderful person for what you're doing. Thank you. That's
Well,
all.
thank you. Now you got me teary eyed.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm just
Yeah,
calling,
thank you.
calling what it is. Yes. Yep.
Thank you so
Oh.
much.
No, and
Yep.
truly,
Yep.
no, thank you, Shelley, for saying that. I think that echoes what everyone on the call is feeling here. The
It's
amount
true.
of
Mhm.
passion, the passion, the compassion, I guess, and the passion for the work is truly palpable. So, what are some of the ways that community members can help? What are some of the ways that those of the folks on the call or who might be watching this later, how can people come and help?
So there's quite a few um challenges in DC when it comes to funding. Right now, well, before, when clients have been in a unit for 2 years, um, DCHA would help pay for security deposits. That has stopped, including now unit based or site based. Now they have stopped paying for first time lease ups, which was never the case since I have started. And so probably donating to like charities or organizations that can help support security deposit or emergency stabilization funds would be helpful. As far as children during school time when they're starting to re-enroll, a lot of them do not have school uniforms. So that has been something that we've had 3 participants didn't allow their children to go to school until they had it. Even getting haircuts. One parent did not want her child to go in there without a haircut. And although it seems silly to us, to them, that's their pride, right? Hey, I may not have everything. I want my child to show up, looking nice. So,
Of course.
I don't know, maybe partnering with employers and workforce programs that can kind of help, because although aim higher is great, they get filled up very quickly, right? And so also maybe having some other programs to help would be good. I don't know. John Michelle, if you have any.
Well, no, I think you've hit upon something because I am going to. And first of all, as we're coming up on the hour, I guess this is probably a good time for us to start to get to closing here. I first of all, Shanae, thank you. This is, again, as Shelley said, your compassion and your passion
Yes.
for the work is truly is palpable to hear you talk and to talk to you. So thank you for sharing your story and the story of your team and the story of the people we serve. So this is um, just wonderful to have you share here. And private support, such as what we do in the fundraising team, helps to provide those extras. And we've got wonderful partners in the city. But city funding and government funding can't fund everything. So your private support helps to help us do those extras. And so, Jean-Michel, if you don't mind, if Chris Kerner is on the call, the breakfast is in 2 weeks, and that's one of our bigger fundraisers a year. Chris, are you still on the call, or did you have to run? Oh, okay, I'll jump in if Chris had to run. She may have had to run to another call. Our breakfast is in 2 weeks. If you have not signed up for our breakfast, send me or Chris an email. It is 8 a.m. Washington Hebrew Congregation. Run of show runs from 8:40 till about 9:30. Buffet breakfast and a chance to really hear from the people we serve, and that's a very powerful opportunity here. So, please, if you can make it, come on down to the breakfast in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from tomorrow. So that is a big way to help. So before we close this out, I just want to say once more to Shanae, thank you to your team, to you, to everybody, the people we serve, and to everyone on this call, because you're making this work possible and enabling us to do our job. And so I think what I will do is let Jean-Michel have the final word.
Yes, well, thank you, Chris, for facilitating this wonderful conversation. And thank you so much, Shanae, for really making things come alive today and for everything you do in the division and for Friendship Place. I echo what Shelley Gilbert said. There's a sense of humanity, compassion, caring that comes through when you speak. That's very, very moving. And I love the reference to the home visits, the hands-on approach that we like at Friendship Place. Yes, a director showing up in my
Mhm.
apartment, in addition to my case management. It really exemplifies the way we work at Friendship Place. And then I just want to draw people's attention to also the way we honor parents' sense of pride. It's really important to realize how sensitive our role is and in relation to this parent who is being supported by the system and at the same time needs to parent and show that to their children. And it's a very sensitive thing that we do, and our case managers are really skilled in that way. And you've heard the responsibilities we have through contracting, making sure the children go to school, that there's proper nutrition in the home, that the home conditions are good, that medical care is proper as well. All this with only a few visits really during the month. So I just want to salute our case managers at Neighbors First Families for the great work they do. And thank
Yes.
you all so much for being online again with us this afternoon and for all your support during the year. We need you. Um, Please come to all the events during the springtime that we have. We have great lineup and be well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Take care and